Come on.
Nike, headband, fatigues, and black North Face. 17 years of struggle on my scarred face. Vegas project with bass.
Welcome to Hip Hop Now Podcast. If you're from the future, you know what to do. Get your ass out of here. Don't disrespect the legend. Hip hop is here to stay. Let's get right into the business. What up, y'all? I am your host, Vegas, and this is Hip Hop Now Podcast, a podcast specifically designed to keep you caught up on all things hip hop, music, and culture that happened throughout the week. Big shout out to all the supporters, past and present, from patreon.com/hip hop. Now, if you're watching the video version of this podcast, you can see the names below. Speaking of the video version, what I would like to say is if you listen to the audio version of this podcast and you're like, I've really been digging this for years, I've really been digging this for days, seconds, minutes, whatever it may be, please know there is a video version of this podcast on YouTube where we are on the road to 500 subscribers. Right now, we are knocking on the door of 460. A couple of people showed up last week. I appreciate you, but we need more. So the best thing to do is, if you watch this and you kind of like what you hear and you want to hear more, you want to see more, hit that subscribe button, help a brother out. Hit that like button if you like the episode. Obviously, definitely comment. I read all the comments. A couple of people engage. It ain't toxic, at least not yet. That's because I don't have a lot of subscribers. But we're going to try to keep it from being toxic in the comment section. But it's all about expressing your opinion. You know what I'm saying? So do that because it's most important, because I look at my statistics on YouTube and more than 50% of the people that press play on these episodes, on these videos, are not subscribers. So become a subscriber today. And if you're like, I kind of like this one, I'll check in when I feel like it, that's cool also. But if you do like an episode or any video of content I post here, the best thing you could do to help a brother out is to share it with people you know would enjoy this kind of content. Now, big shout out to hiphopdx.com. Double XL Mag is back. You know, they was tripping a couple of weeks when they were posting stuff, and I was like, yo, what y'all posting? But they're good. I checked it out. And a couple of places where I get some of my stories from. Let's get right into the business. So apparently, the feds are going to auction off Dame Dash's stake in Rockefeller Records, or Rockefeller in general, the company. So I don't know if that's just Rockefeller Records and whatever else comes with that, right? I don't know. Maybe they haven't released any outfits yet, but who knows? Maybe Rockefeller Wear is still, or Rockaware, whatever it's called, is still a thing. They just don't have anything new. So whatever stake that is going to be auctioned off by the feds to cover a $800,000 debt from Mr. Dash. His interest in the company is about 33.3%. The fact that that percentage would only yield $800K is surprising, but not. I mean, I don't know. It's not really that surprising to me, but I guess it kind of is. Given Rockefeller's history of music, one of the things, unfortunately, that happens with, you just keep it real, black labels, specifically in hip hop, after their big heyday, they tend to like get devalued like crazy, even with huge artists being a part of the label. Like you saw, I mean, we know it's a liquidation sale now, but you saw what Diddy was doing, giving everybody their masters, because what was it worth? But Bad Boy was a movement. And unfortunately, because of all the other stuff going on, you know, with some of these labels and their legacy or whatever, this music that a lot of people, certain generations cherish, doesn't really become like, I don't know, profitable for whoever owns it because it's forgotten. I don't know what that was about. It gets forgotten throughout history because, unfortunately, in hip hop, we tend to move on, and especially when you're talking about the bad boy era, it's looked at as if the only thing that was ever released was, shiny suit music, which is not true. But with Rockefeller specifically, Jay Z's catalog alone on Rockefeller. I believe he owns the masters to all of his albums on Rockefeller, except 100% owns all of the masters to his albums on Rockefeller, except Reasonable Doubt. I think that one is still sort of owned by Dame Dash. He either owns a portion or a significant portion or all. I can't remember, but I know Reasonable Doubt is the one because he teased like selling it, right? Which is crazy. He probably tried to sell it to Jay and probably up the price because of how rich Jay is, when knowing all he needed was like 800K, which is crazy. And it speaks volumes to why he's been on tour talking about Jay-Z so much, because dog, we don't believe you. You need more people. Uh, I mean, this is business. Unfortunately, I just wish some of these labels from a specific generation's heyday, like my own, just knew how to really preserve the moment that was for that label, right? Like, I think with Death Row, yeah, Snoop owns it now, but it's really more about the new music on the label, right? It's not really about like constantly doing things with the older music. Who knows how that worked out? Did he, when he bought Death Row Records, did he just buy the name Death Row Records, or did he get the catalogs that came along with that, or does everybody else own the catalog? Did he get a couple of them? Who knows? But he's really focused. Snoop in particular is really focused on putting out new music under the label Death Row Records, which is dope. Okay, new stuff. But Rockefeller was like splintered completely and probably will never become what it was. Um, with there being an auction, will Jay buy it and bring back Rockefeller Records in a certain way and relaunch with some newer artists and some familiar artists who probably need a deal like Petey Crack? Because honestly, maybe that the writing's on a wall. Bleak making records, got an album coming. He's featured on Graph's album, which is pretty dope. You guys check out Graph album. Um, Freeway just put out Stimulus Package 2, which was dope. He Outside, he also on that Graph song. Petey Crack on, I don't really like Petey Crack verse on Freeway's album, but on Graph's album, it's a song called Rockefeller Chain. He back in the pocket, so he back outside. Now we know Beanie Siegel doesn't have the voice he used to, unfortunately. But I know he was looking to utilize AI in some way to kind of still write new material, but get AI to use the quality of his voice previously. Now, the only thing with that is like, and I know this sounds crazy, but who owns it? Because, sure, he can go and make new music, even if his voice was fine. But if he's going to pull from older tracks that he recorded for another label, which will have another owner, and he don't own those masters, then he probably can't do that. So I don't know. I said all that to say that Rockefeller is back outside in many ways. And seeing this is interesting. I'll be curious to see who buys it, because it could be anybody. Doesn't mean it's going to be Jay-Z, but we'll see. So LL Cool J sat down with Mr. Magoo, not Mr. Magoo, Shannon Sharp. Okay. Hey, look, I watch Nightcap all the time. I actually prefer it over First Take. I'm just being real. I'd rather watch him and Chad Ochocinco and who is it? Agent Zero. What's his name? I forgot. Uh, I'd rather watch them talk sports than the dumb stuff on ESPN. As far as the debate shows, I watch other stuff. But LL Cool J was on Shannon Sharp's podcast and was asked his top five or his Mount Rushmore for Def Jam records. Now, this is the second time we on some Mount Rushmore stuff. And people felt some kind of way. And it's like it's becoming the new list. And it's still it's just another list with a different name. Mount Rushmore of Def Jam. Now, from what I understand, well, let me say this for those people who are getting their news here. Apparently, some people feel some kind of way because there were several snubs to them as far as the top guys on Def Jam. And let me just tell you who LL listed as the top people on Def Jam. Of course, he listed himself because why not? He the GOAT. Why not? Okay. So he put LL Cool J, Public Enemy, the Beastie Boys. Hold up. This is kind of cut off for me, y'all. Hold up. The Beastie Boys and Slick Rick. Right? 4. I think Common did 5 last time. People felt some kind of way because they like, well, hold up. There's been a couple of people over the years on Def Jam, like Method Man, Jay-Z, DMX, Fabulous, Nas. I think The Roots was on there for a second. I think even Kanye was on Def Jam for an album or two or whatever. Ludacris, Rihanna. There was a lot of people who have been a part of Def Jam, including people in between that were a part of Def Jam. But this was LL's thinking. The Mount Rushmore that we see, like the actual Mount Rushmore, are more of founders, not the best presidents. The founders of this country, right, are on Mount Rushmore. So to him, when you say Mount Rushmore, he's saying those people who built the foundation of hip hop on Def Jam Records. Now, some of you are misinformed. Some of you was like, how could he leave out Run DMC? Well, Run DMC was never on Def Jam. EPMD was, right? But Run DMC never was on Def Jam. They were on Profile Records, but they were managed by Rush Management, which is Russell Simmons, right? That was his management, who is Run's brother. So they were never on Def Jam. Just watch Crush Groove. But they shouldn't be considered in this list. So what LL was saying, I don't have no problem with his list. Because when you think about the founders of the Def Jam sound and legacy, it's not none of the new people. It's LL, Beastie Boys, Public Enemy, and Slick Rick. Hands down. Built it, right? Built what it was. And I know with Slick Rick, it was like he had that one classic album, which is right behind me if you're watching the video. And a group like EPMD that came out in the late 80s also had several albums. EPMD will never had the impact that Slick Rick had with one album. And I love EPMD. But they didn't have that same impact as far as influence. And for Def Jam, early on, Slick Rick was a beast, right? So I agree with that. Now, if we just talking some of the biggest artists on Def Jam, that list would look bigger to me, right? LL has to stay there because, I mean, the longevity, 10 straight platinum albums, I'm sorry. Several decades in the game, LL has to be there, right? But so does Jay-Z. Now, Reasonable Doubt, children who don't know, and some of y'all old folk who forgot, some of y'all old heads forgot, Reasonable Doubt wasn't originally on Def Jam. It was on I think that was on Priority. I think it was on Priority and another label, and I don't have the CD in front of me because I have the original CD. When Reasonable Doubt first dropped, those who went and bought it in the record store bought it, and it wasn't on Def Jam. So it didn't say Def Jam on the back. And the picture of the CD was different, right? It was a picture of the ground with like a little gun on it or whatever, right? That's the original release for Reasonable Doubt. Then I think maybe a year later, when they made got their Def Jam deal, that's when they kind of changed up some of the artwork. And obviously they put Def Jam on there, and they added some bonus songs like Can I Live Part 2, right? Wait, was it Can I Live Part 2, which is slept on. Y'all be sleeping on that record. That record fire with Bleak on it. But with that being said, like, it was just crazy to think, oh well, let's just go back to the list because I'm stalling a little bit. I don't think Nas should be on Def Jam, a Mount Rushmore. This Mount Rushmore that I'm talking about, only because a lot of his best work was off Def Jam, right? With Columbia, right? Like, yo, Illmatic is not on Def Jam. It Was Written is not on Def Jam. Like, it's not. All right. So to me, you could say LL, you could say DMX, you could say Jay-Z. I think you definitely got to say Public Enemy because of their legacy on there. And then that fifth spot becomes a little murky because it might be Kanye. And this is like by way of Rockefeller Records. Like, we know he was on Rockefeller Records, but which was a subsidiary of Def Jam Records, right? So by way of that, he wasn't straight up Def Jam artist. So I don't know. It gets kind of mixed up or whatever. And, the Beastie Boys was huge and stuff like that. But for what LL meant, as far as what Mount Rushmore is, Mount Rushmore, like, it ain't the best presidents up there. It ain't like, oh yeah, Obama up there now. No. It's the founders of this country, right? I ain't gonna get political, I almost did. That's what the Def Jam Mount Rushmore should be. So if you're talking about the founders, the ones who built it, LL, Slick Rick, Beastie Boys, Public Enemy is on point and should not be argued. And lastly, so earlier this week, if you're from the future, you already know what happened, man. Come on, get out of here. Get your ass out of here. You already know what happened. But earlier this week, before I did this podcast, I saw a tweet from Killer Mike, like, yo, new album dropping Friday called Songs for Sinners and Saints by Michael and the Might Midnight Revival. Michael being Killer Mike. And I was like, wow. And it's almost like a follow-up to me, the best album of 2023, best hip-hop album, Michael, from last year. It's like a follow-up. So I was like, okay, well, on Friday, I know what's the first album I'm going to listen to. But then, because I'm subscribed to the email for Run the Jewels and a couple other promotional companies that send me stuff, right, via email, I get a email from the Run the Jewels email, from a message from Killer Mike saying, you know what? For 48 hours, this album is free and dropping early. And I'm like, oh, well, let me get my free copy. So I downloaded it, shared it with a couple homies, I'm saying. Not too many, but it's just a couple, And I was like, cool, I'm going to listen to it and see what I think. So those who know, when I do these reviews or reactions or whatever, 3 listens. First listen, my impressions. It's all about impressions. How does this thing sound? Second listen, I just listen more intently to the concepts, to the lyrics, to the beats, to the overall presentation. And the third listen is just to confirm my thoughts on what I heard. And for those who need quick reviews, is it better than Michael? Is it on par with Michael? No. But is it a good album? It is. Is it a good follow-up or like a bonus based off an album that was released last year? I think it's more of that. And I'll tell you why. The album comes with about 10 tracks, which is fine with me. 39 minutes in length, fine with me. Features include a lot of singers, obviously, when you hear Revival, like Anthony Hamilton, and rappers is like Offset's on here. A couple of people are on here, right? Key Glock, Project Pat's on here. Um, is Kirk Franklin on here? I think so. I don't know. But with that being said, I was like, okay, this is a nice quick listen, and I'm assuming if he's gonna tether it to the album that got him a Grammy, then this just better be good. And I think it is good, and I think it's a perfect extension in concept to what we heard last year, but probably leaning more towards the gospel, or let me just say spiritual side of things. So it's not like a gospel rap album by any means. It's a lot like Michael lyrically, as far as Killer Mike telling you about himself, his upbringing, his roots, and the things that go through his mind, not even went through his mind back then, but also today. So lyrically, it's right on par with Michael, because Killer Mike just has a knack for being extremely relatable and really conveying his feelings through his flows and his lyrics. So it's really compelling from that standpoint. If you like Michael and you like the content as far as lyrically, this is just more of that, which is dope. Production wise, I think quality wise is on par with Michael for sure. But I think some of the beats are hit or miss. I don't think any of the beats were whack at all. I just think there are some tracks where I really get into it because of the production. Like, for example, after the intro, there's a song called Nobody Knows. And it's just the energy behind that track, and along with the quality, because the quality is on point, it just gets you in the mood for this album. That's one of the things that this is one of the reasons why Killer Mike's album was granted a Grammy, and albums like that, because there's something to be said about care when it comes to your projects, right? Like thinking about the listener. Okay, here's an intro, right? What do we want the intro to say to the listener before we set them up? How do we want to set the tone for the first record they hear, right? And I think between the intro and the first song, which is Nobody Knows, I think they set you up lovely for what the journey is going to be. I just don't think it's as good as Michael, and it doesn't have to be as good, but I think it's a perfect companion piece. If you never heard the Michael album from Killer Mike and you go listen, you like, yo, I love it. I kind of like this dude. What else he got? Go listen to this, because I think it's a great follow up. Is it going to be in my top 5 of the year? But nah, that top 5 is getting very competitive right now at this point. Best of the year, it's in heavy consideration, because again, that list I presented of the so far, right? Best of the year so far, it's all upside down now. Too many people releasing dope records. So definitely go check out Killer Mike's new album, Songs for Sinners and Saints. And also a quick bonus, even though I'm not going to review it here, if you just want some hip hop and some bars, and there's plenty of those albums that have dropped. One that I just recently listened to one time so far, but is probably about to go on heavy rotation, is this new album from Graph. I'm just look it up now. I know there's somebody like, oh, Graph. No, it's hip hop. It's spelled differently. It's Gra. What is it? FH? Yeah, like Graph. Whatever. But definitely check that one out. That's the album that contains the posse cut with a couple of former Rockefeller Records label mates, because Graph was on Rockefeller. Unfortunately, at the moment they broke, so he never really got to, release anything worthy of kind of like Petey Crack, Graph, and the unfortunate death of Big L. Like that Rockefeller roster lyrically was about to get crazy. But this album is really dope, so you should check it out. That's going to do it for me. What do you think about Killer Mike's new album? Do you like it? Are you a fan of Killer Mike? Do you want something different? Honestly, I like this, but I could take a new Run the Jewels, to be honest. I could really take one of those. Leave your comments in the comment section below. Please know that if you watch this podcast and you like it, well, subscribe. If you want to stay locked in to when a new episode or new content is posted to the channel, hit the notification button, hit the like button, and more importantly, share it with people you know enjoy this kind of content. If you just want to do the audio side, don't worry. It's also on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and everything else you use. Literally everything else. All right. So, with that being said, until next time, y'all, I'm not a critic, I'm a fan. Peace.